Good morning. My name is Caitlin Letnich, and today I'm going to be going over my global nutrition project. And I researched and looked up information about the country Lebanon. So let's get started. So today, let's first start off by looking at the background information about Lebanon. Their history. Lebanon's history started in the Bronze Age with the Phoenician influence of who controlled the land during that time. And later down the road, it was passed through the Romans and the Turkish and the French, which all are prominent to how their country developed and was influenced. Next, we're going to look at religion. Their religion makeup includes Shi'i Muslims, Sunni Muslims, Maronites, which is part of Christianity, and Druze. And so each religion has different beliefs that influence food habits, which we will look into more of it later. Their geography. So if you can see here in this image, Lebanon's right here, and the Mediterranean Sea is right to the west of it. And to the east of it, we have Syria, and then south of it, we have Israel. And so it's just a good idea to look at where it is in the world and how it's located in the Middle East. Moving on, we're going to look at the background information, more about the background information. The economy, typically the government doesn't have, is very limited in what it can do with in the economy and businesses. So it does not regulate taxing and taxation. So that means the government is not receiving funding. And so a way for the government to receive funding is through tourism or the workers from Lebanon that work in other countries can send money to the country to help with the shortage. Um, for education and literacy, Lebanon tends to have one of the highest literacy rates in the Middle East. Education used to be taught through religions, but now it's kind of centered more about not so much religion based. It takes place in actual private or public schools, which aren't religion taught. And so students can attend these public or private schools, graduate, and then they can attend trade schools or colleges to help advance their education. And for their communication style, they are high context, which means that they need to look at the context around them to decipher what is going on and what the meaning of the message is. And so here's a private school in Lebanon, and here's a public school. So their food habits. Their core foods are the foods that they tend to eat the most and are most prominent in their diet. And this includes olive oil, garlic, legumes, fruits, vegetables, and nuts. And the secondary foods that are most prominent is animal proteins such as lamb, chicken, and beef. And all of these secondary and core foods make up pretty much of what their diet consists of. In their culture, to help cook and things like that, they do use spices such as thyme and sumac, but they tend to not use much cream, butter, or sauces. Also, it's important to note that when they eat, they enjoy eating as a family or just with other people around them. Lebanese people love social interaction. And so typically food is served in a mess style, which typically is just like a bunch of little different plates around with different dishes. And so everyone tries a little bit of each dish. And this encourages connection and speaking with other people, socializing, and it's just an important part of their culture. And for their food prep, it typically includes sauteing, grilled, and baking. And so this is just an image of some vegetables that they could be sauteing. So their holiday foods. With the two main religions with Islam and Christianity, they typically have some dishes that they make for the holidays. And so for Islam, it's kabeh, mamul, and warak. And typically they're eaten after a long fast. In Islam, the long fast is Ramadan. And then for Christianity, we have sfiha, roasted lamb, and kayak. And these foods are typically made for Easter. And so, like I mentioned before, the Lebanese culture really sees the importance in family, and so typically these holiday foods are all eaten together as a family to connect and socialize with one another. And here in this image, we can see the dispersion of religious demographics in Lebanon. We see Maronite takes up a little chunk of the population and also quite a bit of Muslim. So I think it's just important to note that across the country. So here are some of the Lebanese ethnic cuisines. We have the kebeh dish, mamoul, warak, sviha, kayak, and roasted lamb. And all of these are really influential, important in their culture, and some of the dishes that they like to eat. And so, looking at the evaluation of their food habits, with every country, foodborne illness arises, and it's it's preventable, but it's just important to look at the steps to do that. And so, typically, the reason for food-related illness is because of improper food handling, just like not washing your hands if you leave food out too long, things like that. There's a whole list, but typically, their health issues from food don't really arise from their diet. Their diet of being Mediterranean is very fresh, contains a lot of herbs, and it doesn't really contain like those greasy type foods that would cause health issues. And so, just like any country, there is chronic issues that people have. They could be hereditary, and those can be diabetes, hypertension, asthma, and cardiovascular disease. And so, they're encouraged foods that they try to put in every meal is the vegetables, olive oil, and garlic and herbs. And these are just fresh foods that, are really good for you, provide a lot of benefits. And maybe some foods that should be modified includes their dish called kibbeh, and it contains raw meat. And raw meat is kind of like maybe you shouldn't use that as much because it doesn't follow the proper sanitation methods, and if it's left out too long, it could just cause illness for individuals, especially if they're high risk, which is elderly, or young children. So things like that. So modification would be to use cooked meat rather than raw meat to help prevent food-related illnesses. And so, to conclude, Lebanese culture is very interesting to learn about their food habits and history. Typically, their country's history really influences the way they eat because of the settlers before them and how what religions and things like that influenced their diet. And so, I think it was just cool and interesting to learn about how that influenced Lebanon and how they are the way they are today. And so I just hope this presentation gives people an insight into how Lebanese food is made and the different types and into their cultural beliefs. Thank you.